here with Brian and Ashley Alexander, who really have such a beautiful story of coming to Christ together. And so, Brian and Ashley, thank you for being here tonight. I have a couple questions, and we just want to share your story with the world. And they've been married since 2023. And tell me a little bit about how you first came to Christ and really got on fire for the Lord in 2019. It was 2019, right?
Well, yeah, 2019 is when it really took off for us. We both were believers before then, but in 2019, I got hit with really bad anxiety and panic attacks, and we really started digging in to God and just really looking into the reason behind everything, and it really led us to God.
Yeah, we both had our belief systems. The best way I like to put it is that it's like I had all the puzzle pieces, and then unfortunately Brian had to experience anxiety, but through that we tied everything together, and he really put it together for us. And we've been able to grow more with God since that.
What was it like trying to have a life or have a marriage? How was your marriage different before you were you described it as being lukewarm before you guys got on fire in 2019. How would you describe the difference in your marriage before you got real passionate for God and after? How's it affected your marriage to pursue Him so passionately together?
God just took us, guided us one step through another on what we needed to do, how the next step we needed to go this whole time. And I don't know how to put it. It's just unbelievable, like how to even word this in a manner that even makes sense.
Sure.
But just the glory of God just kind of rained down on us and guided us through the whole thing, and which ended up leading us here.
How has He been different since He's gotten on fire for the Lord? Like how's that affected your marriage? I should say.
It's affected our marriage a lot. Before we used to fight each other over a problem. Now we're trying. It's more focused on it's us against the problem.
So good.
And as Brian said, the spiritual warfare aspect of it, I never understood that. And having an understanding of how that affects our lives and what that looks like has changed drastically. Our marriage is stronger. We still have rough times, everyone does, but it's a lot different when you have God to help and lean on than when you don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Was there an aspect of spiritual warfare? Can you think of a specific example that you got a hold of that really made a difference for you? Was it just understanding that there was a spiritual warfare happening?
Oh, that's the whole deliverance and the spiritual warfare. Once you start, rebuking and casting and breaking down strongholds, all this stuff that comes in and just starts waylaying you, the whole overall thing of it, that was just one thing after another. Once you try to get away from all your sins of the flesh and you try to move away from closer to God, you just get hit with so much stuff at once, and it creates a interesting time. But one specific point, I can't pick one point out, but
did you know before that you could cast down thoughts, that you could rebuke, that you could say get out of here in the name of Jesus? Did you know that before? Was that new?
I knew, but I didn't know. It was one of those things. I thought I knew it, but I didn't know anything about it. So that's the thing. We learned all this stuff together.
That's awesome.
Even as you get closer, you still get spiritual warfare. I've noticed it this week with, we're planning all this stuff. And even this week, I noticed it with stuff that went on this week, trying to cause just little things, trying to jump in there and cause issues throughout, trying to prevent things like this from happening.
How would you encourage men? I'm going to ask you this too, but how would you encourage husbands to be praying for their wives, or how would you encourage them to help lead their wives in the things of God? If you had some men in front of you that don't know how to do that, how would you encourage them to do that?
Be patient, listen, be understanding of the way they feel.
Good. How would you say to ladies that maybe don't know how to? Let me just ask this way, because I wanted to talk a little bit about, just because you brought that up too, is a great way to bring that in. His needs and her needs. are so different. The Bible really talks about a woman's number one need is to be loved, and a man's number one need, not that they don't need love, but they need respect. And so that's one of the things I love to talk to couples about, even in premarital counseling, or couples that come in that need help, is that her needs are different than your needs. And for women, when we understand that a man needs respect, and they look for respect from their wife more than anybody else, more than anyone else. It's like, God took the rib out of Adam, and we have access right up close to his heart. I mean, how we have so much influence on our husbands. And so learning to show respect to our husband, making them feel like godly men, is huge. How would you maybe encourage ladies? Have you grown in that since coming to the Lord?
I think a big thing on that is stop listening to the world on how you should be as a wife.
Good.
You should listen to the Bible. That was a big thing for me is, it's a huge movement that women are independent and women do this. No, my life has gotten so much better following my husband and letting him lead.
Good.
And that was really a struggle for me because I had a son before we got married, and I was the leader of that. And letting him take the reins and calming my thoughts down enough to be like, well, just listen and absorb what he's saying for a second, because I feel like people get in this battle mode of, well, it's 2025, women are independent and they do all this. That's not what marriage is. And a lot of people go into marriage wanting to keep that independence and keep that seperation, and that's not what we're supposed to do.
That's good. The word we're really talking about is submission. It talks about wives, submit to your husband. That's what we're called to do. That it says, husband, love your wife as Christ loved the church and laid his life down for it. And so when you have a husband that is loving you well, it's not hard to submit to that. And it doesn't mean you give up your thoughts, your ideas, your gifts. Not at all. It just means that you understand he's the head of your home and that he's leading. That doesn't, and really a godly man will want to hear your voice and want to hear and want to champion you. And my husband has a more laid back personality than I do in some ways. But let me tell you, he wears the pants in our house because he knows if we come to a decision that we disagree, and we'll both go in and pray, and if we both feel differently, he knows I'll go his direction because God's put that mantle on him as a man. And it's really for a covering, it's for a protection, it's to champion you, it's to empower you. It should not be where it's abused, where a man, well, I'm the head of the home, so do what I say. That's been an abuse of submission. But when you have what you guys are describing, where you're pursuing God together and doing it God's way like that, it's a beautiful thing. It brings peace to your home. It brings peace to your life. So it's beautiful. Okay, so the Bible talks about how we are three-part beings. We are spirit, soul, and body. And the world really obviously portrays that people get connected physically, and just that's, you can date different people, try people out, and date somebody, be with somebody, live with somebody until you get tired of that, or they don't meet your needs, and then you just find somebody else. But the Bible's concept of love and marriage being that it's a covenant, that it's forever, and that we're designed to be connected spirit, soul, and body. And the deepest part of that connection is spiritually. So when you are pursuing God together, as you guys have been spiritually, it automatically brings a closeness and a connection that you just can't get on the other levels. The other levels are a blessing. We're knit together in our soul, we become friends. Intimacy in marriage is a blessing. It's a gift from God. But it's that deep connection spiritually that knits you together at such a powerful level. Can you guys describe how growing spiritually has made you feel closer? How that's made you see each other in a different way, or how that's affected you personally?
It's definitely made us understand each other better. And when one's upset or something like that, you can just feel it more. You can just tell, you can just feel what the other person's feeling. You can it brings a closeness between each other.
Right, definitely.
And that's definitely the main part I notice in it.
Definitely.
So.
What about you?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good. It's a different type of intimacy.
Right.
And I've never been intimate with a person on that level. So it's a complete game changer.
Right.
And I feel like we can almost talk without talking.
Right.
Like
sure.
It's
deep
palpable.
understanding. Right.
Yeah.
Right. When you get in the presence of God together, and he's knit your hearts together, and brought you together as one, and he's in it like that. There's a closeness that he brings that you can't experience any other way. You can't get that in the world. You can't get that through just physical encounters. You can't get it. It's a spiritual connection that knits you together. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
So I love your story. I love what God's doing in your life. Like, got a bright future in Jesus, and we're excited to see what all he's going to do. Amen.
How I knew that he was the right one was when I used to be on dating apps, and I was never a fan of them. But it was funny because it was like I can hear God talking to me every time I would just kind of click on something. I could hear him saying, nope, nope, nope. So I got to the point where I just didn't seek anymore. I was done. So the day that he popped up in one of my messengers, it was just a go. And when we first started talking, we had so much in common. We had so much of the same traits that we wanted to carry on together. And so that's how I knew we were the right one. And then I know we spoke earlier about we didn't even know we were baptized on the same day in the same year before we even knew each other. And they happened to be sister churches. So I thought that was crazy.
So the first time I saw Haley, I just kind of knew that I wanted to get to know her more, because the first time I saw her, she shared the most powerful testimony about her vision and how God healed her vision, and the doctors told her that it wasn't going to happen. She would never drive a car. And the scripture is he blind because of his mother or his father's sin? No, he's blind because so the power of God can be manifest. And it was just like, wow, my wife has that experience. And I just wanted to hear more about it. And a lot of our testimony of being single, you'll find that we went through the similar experiences with our children's other side of the parents, and we experienced so much of the same things. We were able to talk about it so much and just get to really dig in and know each other through those experiences.
Right. Well, we're talking with John Lee and Haley, and we just love their story. One of the things that I love about your story is that you waited for the right one, and that you took the time to seek God, and both of you went through a previous marriage. You had a previous marriage.
Yes.
And so how many children did you have? Tell us all. I know, but tell us how many children you had before you met Haley.
I have one child.
And how old was he?
When we met, he was, I want to say 12.
12. And you have?
I have 2 daughters, and their ages when we met were, my youngest was, I think she was 6. And then my oldest was about 10.
One of the things I love about your story is that how you obviously both overcame broken hearts. A lot of times when people go through divorce or trauma or rejection, it's such a painful thing to go through at any level, but often people will either jump in another relationship immediately, try to numb the pain, or they withdraw and they say, I'm never going to trust anybody again. How did God work with you? How did God heal your hearts to prepare you for getting married again after going through that?
For one, I didn't even really know the type of woman I really wanted, and God, I think he wanted me to know what kind of woman I wanted before even blessing me with that. So some things, he just put a lot of being honest with my partner.
But you said earlier when we were talking that you weren't ready for her until God did a work in him and in you, that until you became the man she needed. And so I love that scripture talks about he binds up the brokenhearted. And the Hebrew word actually means, it's to bandage. He wraps our hearts up, and that's that season of time. You have to have that before you're ready to really love somebody else. So let's go ahead, and we're talking about blended families. So I want to kind of jump in on with your children. How did you prepare your kids for being in a new relationship? Is that something you talked about with them, especially for people that are listening that maybe have been through divorce and they have kids and they're thinking, how do I prepare my kids for if I ever get in another relationship? How would you encourage them with that?
He talked to his son and was letting him know that he was going to pop the question, and then, he was okay with it. So afterwards, we all, my 2 daughters and his son, we actually went to a restaurant. And we all sat together and we talked about what it meant for us to blend the family. We talked about, kind of letting them know, You know, you don't have to call me mom. You know, we made sure that they felt comfortable, and if they felt like they wanted to, they were more than welcome to call the other person, you know, mom or dad. But we wanted to let them know that we weren't overstepping boundaries with their biological parents.
It's tough. It's really tough, and it can be really scary. But we actually sat down with some other blended families, is what we did, and we went and met other and we had some dinner, and we talked with people who experienced it. You know, because you only know what you know, and a lot of what I got back was love. You know, love no matter what.
What do you think was the biggest obstacle in your blending family?
I think we might have kind of a different outlook. I think for me, most definitely was the discipline within the household. I found that really challenging because the way he disciplined was way different than how I did it. So we definitely, that was definitely one of the things we would find ourselves praying about.
Loyalty conflicts between children, feeling torn between parents.
Oh, sure.
So how did you navigate that? How did you?
We're still navigating that,
Okay.
to be honest. It's really difficult, and
It's we have to be honest with each other when it comes to stuff like that, you know, like especially if we feel like a parent is kind of going toward more with one child than the other, you know, it's coming together, but it's also not doing it in front of the children, but taking it to the bedroom.
That's good.
And discussing that issue so the kids don't think that, you
I
know.
love that. I love that sense of respecting your children. I personally believe that with discipline too. I with my kids, I've always tried to. I take them somewhere if I need to discipline them. I don't always just do it in front of everybody,
Right.
unless I have to. But I love that because it just shows respect. You know, it's respecting their feelings, not humiliating them. And so, especially in your guys' situation where you're building trust and loyalty like that.
yeah.
Not all couples are called to work together and be in each other's space, and a lot of couples get up in the morning and maybe he goes off to work, maybe she stays home, maybe she goes off to work somewhere as well. But Alan and Lisa spend a lot of time together and have a shared passion for martial arts and passion for serving the community.
I think women, it's so important as a woman to be able to encourage your husband, because men and women speak different languages. You know, men are encouraged and they speak the language of respect, whereas women speak the language of love, and we perceive that differently. So by encouraging your husband and showing him that you honor him and that you respect him, he's going to show the love that you need.
Well, I mean, let your yes be yes, your no be no. Be consistent in your character and the things that you do. Don't do things that are going to, what is it, I can't think of the words right now, the appearance of evil. I don't do things specifically because I don't want to upset my wife, potentially. Not that I'm, afraid to do things. Like, for example, I won't go to lunch with another woman alone. That's reserved for my wife. Stuff like that. So I want her to know that she's the most important and she's my wife, and that's it. So
Something I love most about my husband is I just love his encouragement that he provides, but I also love the fact that we're doing life together, meaning that, we've went from, being married to children to having businesses together, and just through all the stages of life, and I'm looking forward to moving forward and growing together in the future.
What my wife has done to help me be the man that I am. We don't have enough time probably to go into that, but I'll try to hit some highlights. We have a saying that kind of a ride or die kind of relationship. She's always, I think even if I do things that she may not necessarily agree with at the time, she's willing to go that way. And then I think now that we're more in the faith, she'll follow me as I follow Christ. And it's really, it helps me to go out there and risk or do things that, a lot of people would say might not be a good thing, like, start schools, get in law enforcement late in life without somebody at home, my wife specifically, to encourage me and to stand behind me and basically, tell me that I can do it. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So
How do you handle leadership decisions in your home? Obviously, you're both go-getters. Obviously, sometimes opposites attract, and you have someone that has a stronger personality. I think you guys are both go-getters and both very driven.
And I think with that, I think he touched on that when you were speaking to him. about how, as he follows Christ, I will
Right,
follow
right.
him. If he's not following Christ, I'm probably not going to be so acquiesced to what he's doing. But
Right.
as long as he's following what God's called him to do and what God's direction has been given to him, then I will follow him to the ends of the earth.
Right, right. That's a beautiful thing. Godly order is a beautiful thing, God's design. And, true godly submission, when you have a man that's willing to sacrifice and lay down his life for you, it's not hard to submit to love. And so I also love, and your husband, my husband, has championed you into your calling, champions you and supports you, and is not intimidated by your strong personality. And that's a beautiful thing. How would you guys define success?
Yeah, it's definitely not monetary. I think that comes, whatever. I mean, I've been like, Paul, I've had little and I've had a lot, and I've learned to be content in all things. But, I think really building relationships, trying to have an impact on people, our community. To me, those are legacy things. Those are eternal things. Those are kingdom things. And I think other than that, I think God figures it out for you and provides what you need and then some.
What did you think marriage should look like early on, maybe before you got married, versus your view of what a godly marriage actually should look like? Did it change over time?
100% it did. Do you want to go for that first?
We got married in a church because that's, what
Because
you're
it was
supposed to
beautiful and already decorated, so we didn't spend the money on decorating it.
I didn't grow up in a house where God was even talked about. She probably more than I did, but we're both very stubborn people, and I think God really likes stubborn people. So, he really stuck with us and pushed us and put up the caution signs and the danger signs all over the place. But we struggled, I think, for a long time. And I think once we fully understood what it was to be in Christ and have him as a third strand in our marriage and our relationship, things turned pretty quick. I mean, it was a pretty substantial change. And I think it was good that we went through that. Wouldn't want to go through it again necessarily, but I think that's what helps us stay together, is an appreciation for what it was in the chaos, probably. And
Been through fire together.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
What was your view of marriage like before you got married?
Well, I had many examples of marriage from my family. My parents had been married 30 years. My grandparents had been married 40 years. I've got aunts and uncles that have been married for, long time marriages. So I got an understanding of, commitment, what it looks like to be committed. However, not all of those relationships were healthy, godly relationships. And so I didn't know that I understood how to first communicate with my husband and what that really looked like, because the women in my family are very strong women, and oftentimes were much stronger than their spouse. And so they were the ones who were setting the rules and being kind of the head, versus being able to follow a husband who's following, Christ, and him being the head. So I didn't quite understand that to begin with, but after we had God as our third strand, that was very well seen and clear. And then we, developed relationships with some godly couples that really helped us understand and help us grow as a married couple and what that marriage looks like. So that was, I think, a big
mentors.
Mentors, yeah. I think we had some very good mentors in our last church.
It's amazing how people carry often into their marriages their perceived ideas.
Yes.
Working with people and couples, sometimes if they've grown up with a lot of fighting, then they just think that fighting and conflict is normal. And so you have to really change your whole paradigm of finding other godly couples that actually are living by the word to model that for you, because if we don't have something modeled for us, we just tend to multiply and duplicate what we've seen, what we've learned. So that's really good counsel, to find a married couple that has what you want. Don't just go by what you've grown up with or what you've seen, but what the Word says, and find someone that's living it out and learn to model that. That's really good advice, really good counsel. Couples, what are some not to do's in your marriage that you would encourage couples with?
The quick one, don't blame your spouse for your failure.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest one. Don't do that. So
Love
it's mine to own, and or hers or whatever side of that coin. So that would probably be the greatest advice. All the other ones I think are pretty things that you can work around pretty quickly, but that one hurts. That one stings.
Do you have anyone that you'd like to add to that?
I kind of like that one. I like that also. But if I was going to add something, a lesson, I think just communicating with one another and not being fearful of what they may have to say, because if we've been saying, if he's following Christ, whatever he's saying is going to be said in truth and love. And in truth and love, it makes it a little easier to hear what they're saying, whether you like it or not.
Right.
And that's a hard one to accept sometimes.
I love that you said earlier that he's able to bring healthy criticism, speak truth into your life. And how have you grown in that and responding to that? Was it difficult at first?
I'm still growing. I don't know that I'm there. I know that might be something I might be. In all honesty, I'm still learning to do that.
Sure. Well, the Bible says as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. And so if anybody should be able to speak truth into our lives, it should be our spouse. And so my husband and I have that agreement. If you see anything in me that you need to correct, we invite that. We welcome that. And it sounds like you've done that as well. And you want to hear truth from someone that loves you more than anybody else.
I do. But
we think we do most of the time.
We think we do that. I think that's the...
It's important though. It is. I think it's designed to be difficult because it's difficult. It's a difficult conversation. As life presents it. I think just having a conversation with my friend in South Carolina. As Christians, we like to see everything as being easy, or it should be. When the Bible tells us otherwise. It tells us in this life you'll have trouble. But take heart. He's overcome the world. So, we're going to have to work through it, and he gives us the ability to do it, and all the tools to do it. So,
he gives you the free will to do it or not do it. And that's true. That's the challenge. Not everyone will take that challenge.
Well, there's kind of in the culture, maybe there's this picture of this finding the perfect man, the perfect woman, and if they're not perfect anymore, you just throw them out and get another one. And it's totally opposite in the kingdom. It's that we don't just come and get married in order to get our own needs met. You get married to fulfill an assignment from God. And not all couples, but some couples, when we have kids, they're just so all-consuming. They consume your life because they're just gifts from heaven, and we love them. But you guys have managed to have a healthy marriage after all your kids moved out. How did you keep your marriage a priority during the time of raising kids, and how did you handle what it was like when they all moved out and it was just the two of you again?
Well, we have our 3 children. Our daughter, she's the oldest, and she moved out a long time ago. She's 30. And then we have the boys, which are about 8.5 years to 10 years younger than she is. So she moved out, and then we just had the boys. And so it was kind of a natural progression. We've always focused.
Jessica and Brandon are out of the house. Tommy's still in the house.
Our youngest is still at home.
He's pretty quiet. He just goes to school and goes to work. But I think it just gave us more time for each other. Before, we were still sharing our time with getting our kids to where they need to go and giving them the attention they needed, and then we just kind of filled in, whenever we could to try to find time for each other, which might have been maybe an hour at the coffee shop or something like that, but or go to the movies once a week, or out to dinner, just
pretty simple, but I think just staying connected, staying connected to one another. And there's a lot of things that are important in a healthy relationship. There's intimacy is truly important in a relationship. Very.
Yeah, it's another conversation.
It's a whole other conversation, right? Well, it's a good thing to bring up, Lisa, because I talk to a lot of women. You know, there's a lot of women that do not value that and do not think that it's something that is important in their marriage, or
But
that
it's very biblical.
Very
And
biblical.
It does state in the Bible. I don't know where or what verse it is, but it does state
do not
that-
deprive one another.
But do not deprive your spouse. But it also says, wives, give your bodies over to your
right.
husbands.
Right. Your body belongs to him.
Yep,
His body belongs to you. That's
Exactly.
right.
So I think that those things are, as silly as that sounds to talk about in church.
No, I think that we have to talk about it in church. I think that if we don't talk about it in church, too much of the people get their ideas from the culture. And so I absolutely, and I think that that's one of the biggest ways of making a man feel respected and honored, and that you are for him and championing him, is that's part of their love language.
Yes, it is.
It's vital. It's even a way of protecting your marriage
Yes.
from spiritual warfare and being intimate together. It's so powerful. And though as women we like to be romanced and go to the jewelry shop and bring us flowers and do all these things that takes time to show love and care. For a man, his language is much more bring me food and bring me you, and that's just a wrap. Marriage is such a gift from God. Of course, we've seen such an attack on marriage through the culture. And why is there such an attack on marriage? Because an attack on marriage is an attack on the image of God. When God created man and woman, he created them in his image, in his likeness. And so when we see an attack on gender, an attack on marriage, it's not just an attack on relationships, it's an attack on the image of God. And so when you see a godly man and a godly woman together, you see a picture of characters and attributes of what God is really like. All of the attributes of man and woman came out of the heart of God. And so it's such a joy to be here and talk to a couple today that has continued to express the image of God by staying together for 42 years. God designed marriage to be forever. It's not just a contract, it's a covenant where he comes in and unites two hearts together to have a love that lasts, where they're connected spirit, soul, and body. And so I know that there's so many women out there that desire that how do you make marriage work? How do you keep it together? How do you stay together when the culture is telling you to just throw it out and start over? We're going to talk with a couple today that has done just that, has a love where they have stayed together, a love that lasts. So after 42 years, obviously your relationship is different now than it was from the beginning. How has it changed? Tell me how things are different now after that long together versus the beginning. What was it like in the beginning? Was it easy in the beginning? Was it rough in the beginning?
It was both. It was different because we started out with a family. It was my first marriage, but you know, Jenny was 10 and Eric was 8, and so we started out with a family with Little League and school and all that, and then we had 2 more, and so we were busy from day one. Where it actually got tough or tougher was when we became empty nesters.
Yes,
Because that was a new experience for us. We had never been just the 2 of us. And
what do we do?
Yeah.
Go get the kids, honey.
Yeah, so that was tough learning to adjust to that because we didn't really have a lot of hobbies in common. I mean, there was stuff that she learned to shoot and ride motorcycles because that's what I like to do, but it was not stuff that you can do all the time, and so it was a rough transition to the empty nesters because you know, I mean, that was her calling, is to be a mom.
Yeah, and I was home all the time with the kids because for 11 years I homeschooled.
Right.
That even made it harder, you know, when they left with Jenny and Eric. They were in public school, so you know but I had Jenny, Tiffany, and Jamie homeschooling them, so it was really hard.
I find that even a good reminder of when you have kids and they consume so much of your life that it's got to be God and then your marriage and then your children and making time for date nights and connecting and
That's important.
doing those things even when you have small children, and that's not easy just
Right.
to find the time. But how did you guys begin to connect after your kids moved out? What did you feel like helped bring you together? How did you work through that?
Well, I think it was hard. I don't know. I don't want to say it was maybe hard the first year because we didn't know how to do it with just him and I. You know, we were always with the kids. You know, we didn't even want to make a trip. I didn't want to even go places where the kids and I have been as a family. I wanted to go where we haven't been as a family because, you know, it just bring back I wish they were here thing. So it took a little while to do that, but now It's absolutely amazing because we've learned it. We do things spontaneously, constantly. Honey, let's just go to the coast and watch the sunset. So I think it's so important to start doing and doing those things, you know, staying connected that way. But I am not a needy person. I don't need John. John's not responsible for my happiness.
Oh, say it again. Please
not,
say it again.
He's not responsible. He's responsible to love me, protect me, care for us, provide for us. But he's not responsible for my happiness. And so I've never held him back. If he wanted to go fish, if he wanted to go golfing, if he wanted to be, I've never held him back from doing those things, making him feel like I was needy. I needed him here. And he's done the same with me because I go to church every day if I could, but because of the drive. So he's always, you know, there's never been that, why aren't you here? Or, you know, I needed you, you're always gone. We've never had that.
If you had, well, it's important for us to have dates, and you said that.
Yes.
I think a lot of people forget that. They get so busy in everyday life and schedules. But if you had like the perfect date you would want to go on, and I know there's probably 2 different versions, give an ideal, because I think sometimes people need a vision or an ideal to be able to come up with something.
That's good.
You know.
Well, we have one that we do that's kind of a compromise. Having the trailer, there's a campsite up on the Willamette River. And so we love to go up there because I can fish and she can sit with her books and read, and then we can take drives up to see the waterfalls.
Just to help our listeners, in today's age, there's so many attacks against marriage. The culture is kind of, you know, redefining what God has already defined. How, if you have any advice or anything that you could tell other women or other men in reference to the culture's effect on marriage, how you get past that, or how you keep your marriage on track despite those things. Example, and this is with kids, culture is telling them family is not important.
Oh, I got you.
Culture is telling them they can be whatever they want. They can redefine the family. So family could be, you know, 2 of the same sex, or even their culture is teaching them that animals now.
Crazy.
That they could become animals if they want. And it affects the family unit. It affects the marriages because they come out of school and they have a skewed view of what a marriage should be. And so young people who are already getting married or in a marriage, how do we keep that from affecting? Because then what I see is in marriages, now the children are being taught those
That it's normal.
misadvantages.
I think it's normal.
But they need something to hold on to show,
Right.
you know, you've been married 42 years and this is why. I mean.
Well, we do. We have a daughter that's gay. And she wasn't always that way. She loved a man very much, and she married him, and bad things happened in that marriage that just devastated her. And so she came here, and she's somebody that never liked being alone, and so she turned to women, to a woman, you know, because she liked being alone. And the way she told us is that she left me a cake on the counter. She doesn't bake, but she left me a cake on the counter one day and says, "I'm gay." And so I just fell to the floor, and I just went to the floor and grief. I was in just grief. I felt like a death just took place. So I didn't know how to deal with this. So I went to my prayer room, and John was very, very, he just hugged me, and I says, "I don't know what to do. I don't know. I've never, I don't know how do I deal with, how do I take care of a gay daughter, you know, what do I do?" And so I went back to my prayer room, and John was very comforted with his words. We were both all on the same page, but I spent my time there, but I would ask God, if I didn't have the direction of the Holy Spirit every step of the way, I would have lost my daughter. You know, I had to go in my prayer room and say, "God," of course I'm grieving, he had to lift me from that. I says, "What do I do? What do I do?" And it was just, I'll come back to love her, just love her. So I never, and she was raised in a Christian home. She was on the mission field. She knows the Lord. And So she asked me one time, Tiffany, what is the thing that you are the most concerned about, you know? Because we were very open talking about it. And I says, well, I think, I don't believe this is God's will for your life, honey. And if it's not God's will for your life, you know, then it may not turn out well. And I didn't want to beat her up with scriptures or make her condemn her or shame her or anything. I couldn't do that because I would lose her. But God would just, every step of the way, He'd direct me on how to do it. She didn't know that I was depressed for a year. I didn't want her to see my pain, you know. I realized I loved that girl.
Well, and it's you're not the only ones, I'm sure, that have navigated such challenging situation, and you're defining when you talk about speaking the truth in love.
Yes.
You know, you have to stand to your convictions, and you're telling them what you
and
believe
they know,
is right.
Yeah.
But your love is what they see. And
Yes, and that has never changed. They know how I feel. That's not going to change, but I'm not going to condemn that. God will take care of all of that. My goal is just to love them, and as long as I love them and do what God is asking me to do, to just love them, God will do it. Because I call it, I just say it, Tiffany's identity has been stolen.
Sure.
You know, that's not who she is. And I've even told her one day when she said she's gay, I said, no, you're not, honey. You just think you are. So.
How did you guys help each other through that? How were you each
John
other's
was the
strength?
same way. John would just say, hey, honey, we've got to just love her. We've just got to love her the way that, you know, that's the hard thing. And of course we'd love her, but it's loving her without condemning her. So I believe with all my heart that this is not permanent.
Amen.
I believe with all my heart that things will change, but God's going to change it. It's going to be His timing. And until then, I have to love them. So, and that I can do, so.
And I think that makes you more than qualified. That you're able to get through this. Basically, what I'm hearing you saying is, together you have gotten through this. You have just loved on her and loved on your daughter, and walk through those doors that God has opened up. And that's what people have to learn to do. With the culture swaying people back and forth, you got to stand your ground. You got to work together as a unit, which
yes, all that will come.
Your roots being so down in the Lord, so strong, to be able to walk through something so painful and still be so united and your marriage is just beautiful, you know, because that's what a hard thing to deal with, and your children like that. But yet you're clinging to God, and your marriage is stronger. It's not weaker in those situations.
And everything along the way, all these hard places along the way, they really do make us stronger. The good comes out where you can see a stronger person because of it.
We're ready to wrap up, but I want you guys to say, just in closing, anything that you would want to say to married couples to help them stay together through the years.
It's not a 50-50. Marriage is not a 50-50. I once heard Nancy Reagan saying that that's our thing too. If John needs 90%, I'm going to give him 90%. You know, and that's not how it is. It's selfless. When you get married, you have to sometimes back away and become selfless. You know, you can't have it always the way you want it. You have to honor. John took me to church the other day morning. He'll take me on Sunday night, Wednesday, because I can't drive at night. But he doesn't always want to go on Sunday, so and he releases me to go, you know, and so I go by myself, unless the weather's bad. So he got in the car the other day with me, and he was going to go, honey, why are you coming? I says, you know, I can see there's no, and he says, I'm coming to honor you. And I'm never going to forget, that was just engraved in my heart right then. So, you know, things like that, doing what you don't want to do to honor your spouse.
Right. Anything else you'd add?
No, I think she's right. You know, put God first.
Right.
You know? I mean, the other thing from a man's point of view is try to make sure that you have things in common to do, because guys like to do stuff. And so have things in common that you'd like to do. It just makes it easier, I think.